Hi, I'm Samantha Seneviratne. I'm here in the Food52 kitchen, and I'm going to show you how to make crepes with ham, cheese, and egg. So I have a 7-year-old son. We love to cook together. He's in his picky phase, so it actually helps a lot if we cook together because then he sort of sees what we're doing, sees what we're making, gets involved, gets excited. I make crepes all the time. This recipe is sort of a modified recipe. It's something I found on the internet, but then I just added a few extra touches. I think extra egg yolks really bring out the richness along with the whole milk and make them extra delicious. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is make our crepe batter. We want that to rest for about 30 minutes, so we'll make it in the blender and then pop it in the fridge to chill. You can do this by hand too if you don't have a blender, no problem. I would just suggest running it through a strainer really quick if you do it by hand, just in case you get any lumps, but if you're doing it in a blender, you shouldn't have any. The fun thing is when you do it in a blender, you can just throw it all in, whiz it together, and it's done in seconds. Milk provides 13 essential nutrients like A, D, B12, and more. So I like to put it in as many recipes as I can to make sure my son is getting everything he needs. And I tell you, he's grown taller by the second, so I think it's working. So I have my flour. We need 2 large eggs and 1 egg yolk. Ideally, these would be at room temperature so that your melted butter doesn't seize up. I also like to put a little bit of sugar in my crepe batter. Even if I'm making savory crepes, I just think that the little bit of sweetness usually complements whatever you're filling your crepes with, and it helps a little bit with the browning. And we need a little bit of salt, and then some melted butter. I'll just whiz that up. Okay. So now this can rest for about 30 minutes. You could make it the day before, pop it in the fridge. Sometimes I keep crepe batter in my fridge for a week and just sort of make a couple every morning. Then you don't have to do it when you're in a rush trying to get your kids to school. So now we're gonna make the bechamel sauce, and this is a creamy milk-based sauce that's gonna go inside our crepes with the egg and cheese and just make the whole thing really luscious. We'll start with our butter and melt that, and we're gonna make a roux. I'm gonna add my flour. We're not trying to brown the flour or anything like that, just sort of trying to cook it for a minute. The milk is the whole point of a bechamel sauce. And also, don't worry, if you wanna use lactose-free milk in the crepe batter or in the bechamel, it's gonna work beautifully. It has all the same characteristics of regular milk, and you can be sure there's no lactose. So now I'm gonna add my whole milk. We'll add it just a little bit of time so we don't get any lumps. And it's gonna thicken pretty quickly. If you have any lumps, don't stress. You can always just strain your sauce. So the milk here is making everything rich and creamy. It's kind of magical because without anything else, at this point, there's no cheese. And still, it's just lovely, creamy, rich, beautiful white sauce. So this is a pretty thick bechamel because I want it to sort of stand up in the crepes and not ooze out too much. If you're making a bechamel for lasagna or mac and cheese, you would make it a little bit thinner. So I just want to make sure this comes to a boil so that we cook that flour properly. And you can see it, it's nice and thick. Does not look so good. So now I'm going to turn off the heat. And it is going to continue to thicken a little bit as it cools, but that's totally fine. And we're gonna add some flavoring. So we need some salt, a little bit of mustard, and some Parmesan cheese. Okay, she's ready. We'll throw in some fresh herbs. I have some chopped chives and chopped tarragon. You could switch that out, a little parsley. Any tender herbs that you like would be great in here. Look at how good that looks. Okay, so now I'm gonna let this cool and get working on my crepes. I have a 10-inch nonstick skillet. You really do wanna use nonstick. It's gonna make your life infinitely easier and better. So I'm heating up my nonstick skillet. I have a little bit of butter. You really won't need very much butter because number one, there's some butter in the batter. And I like to use an offset spatula to help me flip it. So once this gets a little hot, we'll add some butter. I have a 1/4 cup measure. I think that's kind of the easiest way to portion it out. pan is nice and hot. Swirl it around right away. You know how they say the first pancake, the first crepe? Sometimes that one's not perfect, but it doesn't matter. In the end, we're just gonna fill them, fold them, bake them. You won't even know. And you can see it's nice and golden brown, but not too dark. I think that whole milk in there really gives it a lot of richness. It helps with the browning, makes delicious crepes. Okay, we'll give it a couple minutes. I like to see if the edges get nice and golden, because that's when I know I can flip it. Look at my beautiful crepe. We need 6 for the recipe. You might have a few extra. Crepes, they may look a little intimidating, but I promise you they're not. If you've ever made pancakes, you can make a crepe. Even if you haven't made pancakes, you can make a crepe. All you need to do, I think if you have a nonstick pan, you're golden. That's all you really need. My crepes are ready, my bechamel's ready, and now it's time to assemble them. So I have 2 sheet pans. We'll start with 2 on my work surface, and we'll put a little bit of that bechamel. Don't worry if it's thickened up, it's totally fine. It's actually kind of easier to work with when it's thick. So I like a good 1/4 cup in here, in each one, to make it really gooey and rich and delicious. And then we'll put a little bit of ham. So I like really thinly sliced ham. But if you want to make these vegetarian, you can. Just leave the ham out. And then some grated Gruyere cheese, about 1 ounce per. And now we'll make a little well in the cheese so that the egg has somewhere to land. I love these because it's like a really complete meal in an adorable little package. I'm gonna fold up the 4 sides. You can fold them any way you want. You could fold them in half if that's easier. You could roll them up. My son likes to eat them rolled up so he can hold them. But I just think this is a cute way to present it because when your egg is finished on top, it's a beautiful little package. You see that lovely yellow yolk. It's a nice presentation. Oh, I forgot salt and pepper. You can't have an egg without salt and pepper. Just a little bit on top. And once we've assembled all 6, we can pop them in the oven, cook them for about 10 minutes until the eggs are set, and then they're ready to serve. Okay, so they're out of the oven, cooked, and now I can serve them. I think these make a beautiful breakfast, especially on a weekend when you have a little bit more time. I like to serve them to my son, not only with a big glass of milk, but in here he's getting even more milk, even more vitamin D, more protein. We've got a ton of milk in the crepes, then in the bechamel sauce, which makes it really rich and creamy and delicious. Finished with ham and an egg, I think it makes the perfect breakfast. I'm so excited to eat it. We gotta break the yolk so we get a little yolk in every bite. I think that creamy bechamel is my favorite part because it sort of ties the whole thing together. And with a little bit of tarragon, I think it's just perfect. I hope you give this recipe a try. I think you and your family are gonna love it. You can find it at food52.com.